Good morning,
Oh,
good
come
evening,
on.
good
I've
afternoon,
been on
depending on where
one.
you are. Today is January 27th, and this is another of our 6 CLI
A
bi-weekly
lot of
calls.
times.
My name is Ajay, and I will be your host today.
At Christmas, I
Our
got
agenda
money
is pretty
from
packed, so
my
I'll just quickly
grandpa,
go
my
through
grandma,
the announcements. The enhancements freeze is February
and my
9th,
dad's brother.
which is basically less than 2 weeks from
What?
this past Tuesday, yesterday. Um, so if you have any uh, awaiting uh, reviews, Kubernetes enhancement proposals, feel free to reach out to myself, Sean, or Phil, or Eddie, and we will get them through. I have a couple of them related to KUI 1, kubeconfigs from Doug, and I think one or two more that I still owe reviews. I'm hoping to go through all the caps today, tomorrow, generally by the
Gross.
end of this week. All should get the initial reviews. Another important topic is starting from this year, each and every single special interest group will be creating an annual report. Um, I will be creating that report for the 6 CLI. And if you're interested in participating, let me know. I'll be definitely reaching out to folks for additional help. But I'm hoping that the majority of the stuff will be can be done by me easily. I'm seeing that I have some problems with audio. Let me try to quickly bump my microphone in Zoom. That should.
Yeah, message. There is someone with the microphone
I don't
unmuted,
know
and
why.
it's leaking a lot of.
Is now better?
Yeah, that's not you. Yeah, now that's better. Thank you.
I don't know for whatever. Um, yeah, I think it should be better. I don't know why. I was picking the right mic before the call, and Zoom figure out it'll just pick whatever it wants. Okay. I'm hearing no complaints, so we should be good. Cool. Introductions. Do we have anyone new on the call that was not here for 6CLI before? That was your chance to introduce yourself, say a couple words about yourself, and what you're expecting from 6CLI.
Hi, I guess I can go. I'm Francesc. My first time joining, and I actually work with Philip Witrock and Katrina Vray at Apple. So I'm here for the proposal for the cap.
Awesome. Welcome.
Thank you.
I guess I can go next. My name is Aravind. I work at Red Hat. I'm leading the efforts there for enabling Windows workloads in OpenShift. Main reason for attending the meeting is to talk about a KEP where we are trying to add a new feature to kubectl for viewing service logs. Thank you.
Awesome. Welcome. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none. Welcome everyone. A follow-up that I had, I was talking with Wojtek with regards to the previous question from last time about the KEP migration. In the short run, yes, it will be the current in progress. In the long run, the goal is to migrate all the caps to the new format. So if you're currently working on a cap or you have a cap that is, I don't know, halfway through your alpha, beta stage, or you're currently promoting to GA, yes, your cap has to be migrated as soon as possible. For the very old ones, it's not a requirement yet, but eventually they will want to see all of the caps migrated to the new format. So I think that's the only one that I wanted to follow up from last time, and we can jump off to the main topics. And Lee, I think you're going first. Lee, are you going to share your screen?
No, I'm not. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Cool. So to start with, I just want to make sure that it's okay with everyone. I inserted myself ahead of a couple of items because of a scheduling conflict. It's a bit rude of me. I wanted to make sure that no one else also has one. No, fantastic. Thanks, everyone. So we've been having a couple conversations about what to do with things like arguments to kubectl debug. From the beginning, we've wanted to support configurable capabilities. It's a commonly asked for feature for ephemeral containers. But then also we got a feature request for this for the non-ephemeral container use case, which is just creating a copy of a pod and adding a new container. So the biggest request is for being able to trace a process, right? That requires sys ptrace. And then there are a couple others for netadmin and sysadmin. And it kind of points to a bigger question of as people use this built-in more and more, there will probably be more of these. My first thought was that we should just allow it to be configured via flags, but you can see how that would just be a proliferation of flags, you know, one for capabilities, one for tweaking other parts of the generated spec. And so I wanted to check to see if anyone had any good ideas about how we can make that a bit of a friendlier UX. I was thinking maybe something like just a flag that sets admin features, turns on admin features, and you just get a predefined set of netadmin and sysadmin or something like that. Does anyone have any other ideas?
This is for the flag to kube control for the ephemeral container. It creates what permissions it has.
That's right. Yeah, I apologize. I should take a step back. Kube control debug is a new command. It's a new built-in that will do it has three journeys. One is to add an ephemeral container to an existing running pod. The other is to create a copy of a pod and add a new container, or you can modify an existing container. And then the other one is to create a new pod intended to debug nodes. And the question is, how much configurability should we add into the security context? Right now, we don't allow anything, but that's the common use case is to be able to trace a process. So it would be nice to give some configurability into security permissions.
And what's in your proposal, like one is like a list of privileges that they specify, another as like a flag, a repeated flag or something like that. Another is like a meta flag that like corresponds to some pre-configured set of permissions that are common.
That's exactly right.
And then I guess a third could be like these are things that you could otherwise specify in the pod template, right? Or in the container, that would be specifiable in the container spec as part of the API.
Yes, exactly. So this is trying to make that creating a debug container process simpler, so that you don't have to write your own spec, and one is just generated for you by kube control. But they're all just normal features that you could set if you're writing it by hand.
Yeah, I guess a third option would be like allowing someone to specify a pod template or container spec, or like because I'm wondering, like right now it's permissions. I'm wondering if tomorrow it's like, oh, I need more memory for this thing because the command I want to run out of memories, right? Or you know, like whatever it is, right? Then I need to mount this volume, or I don't know. So I think one thing you may want to consider is just like have a flag, which is like, here is the pod temp or the container. Here's the container definition for like to spin up as part of an ephemeral container or that sort of thing, which I know you can do without kubectl debug, but I'm guessing doing it through kubectl debug will still save you a number of steps and be better documented. And then that doesn't need to that doesn't mean we don't can't offer the flags as well. I'd probably do the flags as a repeated list of permissions, and then you can consider also adding a like meta flag, similar to how like kubectl get supports like -- all, for instance, but also supports listing the resources individually.
Kubectl run have an overrides flag that allows me to patch JSON, and that's completely generic and I use for lots of things. To me, it looks like a better approach.
Yeah, I was leaning towards that approach because, like Lee mentioned at the beginning, and Phil also stressed that one, I'm worried about the proliferation of the flags because capabilities today, something else tomorrow, etc. The list will be ever growing, and we will end up with debug having the same problem as run currently has. Whereas having the patch type of a thing, I'm not saying it has to be exactly patch, would be probably similar to what Phil described with regards to being able to specify part of the, maybe not necessarily the entire pod template, but you will be able to specify only the bits that you care about. So if there will be capabilities, all you need to know is path to capabilities, which would override whatever the debug created. This way you have a full control and you're only modifying the bits that you care about, still maintaining the default behavior of the debug in the rest of the bit. And if I'm not mistaken, maybe we can even do the patch to be both a string or even a file, so that it is applied automatically. I'm guessing that applying those capabilities or whatever you want to be struggling with will be pretty much repeatable. I was shortly considering option of having some kind of a profile, but the problem with high-level profiles is that different people will have different opinions what a profile could have. And by profile, I mean, well, we would have some kind of an artificial way of specifying, oh, enable these administrative elements. But that is limited because each person, each user will have a different requirement.
Yeah, like here's maybe something I'd try, like just to see if the UX works, and it probably isn't that hard, is add a command, kind of like Macha was saying, like a profile, like a debug subcommand or something like that, where you can, that it will spit out the pod template that has or the container template that has all these things set, right? Like admin style profile, right? And then that can write the standard out. And then like Macha was saying, like you could have the debug command take as a string or file, like a profile. And so you could then bash it together, right? The command would be kubectl debug -- profile, and then like $ open paren, kubectl debug, like admin profile -admin or something like that, close paren. And then now you have like a nice scriptable way of getting what you want, but doesn't really have any built-in assumptions about like, you know, what the debug command doesn't have a limitation of saying, oh, here's the flags. And we can support the growth of new profiles, like not by proliferation of flags, but simply by adding new subcommands for different sorts of profiles we need. That's how I take a stab at solving this problem. But generally what you're trying to solve makes a lot of sense. Like, yes, we should probably try and solve this.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think one of the things I'd be concerned about is that not all the operations supported by kube control debug allow, like you can't just, so some of them are necessarily imperative. Some of, like, if creating an ephemeral container uses a separate sub resource. So you can't, it's difficult to then use that with another kube control command. But then of course we could create another debug subcommand to then apply that.
I think I was just suggesting, like, from a high level, rather than flags, like having a more expressive file or string, which is like the full set of configuration, not just limited to these, then like is step one. And then step two is that's a hassle for users to generate and they're not sure what it should look like and this sort of thing. So like provide commands to generate that for them. And then step three is like allow them to be wired into one another more effectively. I don't know. I'm not sure if that solves your concern.
I mean, alternatively, we could do, and I think that's still possible if kubectl debug would spit out the JSON, whatever, or YAML of the newly created debug, the pod, and then you just manually modify that one and use that as an input for the debug. I'm not sure if.
Yeah, or dry run, right? Dry run. Here's the
Yeah, you would basically do dry run,
spit
it out, modify, and then use that as a as an input for a debug.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge we just want to make sure of is like an end user probably just wants to say, I want admin, like just give me the privileges I need to do the thing because I'm panicking because I'm in kube control debug mode and something's broken. And so looking up documentation about which things I need to enable is like gonna not be the thing I want to do right now. So just also like pairing that with a like, by the way, here's probably the edits you want to, here's the edited file you probably want or something like that would be a nice thing to provide people.
Kingdom raised his hand. King, do you want to say something?
From an authorization perspective, it might be nice to have something like a pod template CRD, so you can have these pre-authorized and say this user or this role is allowed to create this debug instance based on this pod template. I don't know if kubectl currently invokes any CRDs directly in that way, but
pod template's already a resource. It's not even a CRD. It's a built-in. We don't use it for anything, or like the built-in APIs don't use it for anything that I'm aware of. Right, Mache? It's been so long since I've seen that thing, but I'm pretty sure that pod template was an API.
It's not exposed. It's just part of the API, but
oh, maybe there's not an endpoint for it or something like that.
I can confirm that you can access it. I had built something around it, and there was a proposed deprecation maybe a year ago, and I was one of several people who objected to that, so it's still there.
Yeah, I personally haven't seen anyone creating those, but
anyway,
Okay.
Do you have enough? I think you got a lot of feedback here. You have enough information to move forward?
Yeah, thanks. Just to tie it up, I think what I'm going to do is start out by taking the patch approach that that Run uses, just to, because that's an easy fix and still useful if we support this sort of profiles. And then as a next step, revisit the suggestion that Phil made of having subcommands that can have useful profiles to be a more user-friendly experience.
yeah, patch is definitely something for easy field modification, and that will work fine in, I'm pretty sure in 80% of cases. It'll be harder if you want to modify more, but then we can always revisit that one. Okay, cool. Thanks a lot, Lee. Katrina, I assume you're next with KEP 2299 customized plugin composite API, composition API. You want to share your screen?
I don't need to. I was thinking that since there's a lot on the agenda today, maybe I could just give a really quick high-level description rather than going over the whole KEP, and just give people an idea of whether or not they're interested in this, and answer some high-level questions if there are any, but we can save discussions for the actual PR because there's quite a lot of content in there. Does that sound good?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so this KEP is something that Phil, Francesca, and I have been working on, collaborating on internally at Apple. And basically it proposes a new kind for Kustomize that builds on the existing configuration function specification and concretely on the KYAML libraries that are already available. And it builds an API around configuring and orchestrating those. So by doing this, we're unlocking new capabilities and a better UX for plugin-based workflows. But at the same time, this is a separate alpha API that we're proposing that would be able to be built with customized build, but it's like a completely new type. It doesn't change customization, and we're not proposing integration into kubectl, at least at this time. So in other words, kubectl.k would not accept this type. We want to keep it completely alpha for now. Another important thing to note is that although this is separate, we do support all the customized transformations. So it's kind of, we do support customized transformations as in sort of like a plugin like format, but this new API does also expose the capabilities of Kustomize and is very much in the original spirit. So it's kind of like a superset of the functionality with a focus on composing and orchestrating plugins. And what I'm hoping for is to get some feedback over the next week or so and maybe target lazy consensus date of Friday, February 5th, if there are no blockers. So I'm looking for reviewers on that, people who are super interested in Kustomize or Kustomize plugins specifically. If you could please take a look at the KEP, bring me your comments either right now if you already have some at a high level, or I'm available in the Kubernetes Slack as well as obviously on the PR.
Okay, thanks a lot, Katrina. Does anyone have any questions right away for Katrina?
I have some questions, but I'm going to throw them into the KEP, I guess. It's pretty complicated. And, you know, there's a lot of the assumptions that I'd like to go over. And yeah, thank you for the KEP. Lots of good stuff in there.
Thanks. I really look forward to getting your feedback. Thanks for taking a look. Phil, are you also able to review by February 5th?
Yeah, I'll make sure that I've gone over it. I've already read it, but I'll look over it a second time, and then I'll look at any other comments that pop up as well, and either respond or think about them.
Okay, thanks a lot. Dims, yes, we are very well aware of the question with regards to upgrading Kustomize to newer version. We'll get to that one towards the end when we will be going through stand-ups. Currently, the entire upgrade is blocked by Kustomize changes, and I'll let Jeff to walk through them towards the end of the call. Yes, we are aware. It is a ongoing topic for us, and it just takes a little bit of time. Arvind, you're next with kubectl to view system service logs.
Hey, thank you, Maciej. So, hey, folks, like I said before, I'm Arvind. I'm part of SIG Windows, and I'm actually representing SIG Windows here as part of this KEP. So what this KEP is trying to do is there is a existing var log viewer in the kubelet. We are trying to supplement that with a shim that allows you to basically shell out, in the case of nodes that have systemd in it, it'll shell out to journal CTL and allow you to view logs. And the way Windows came into this picture is we want to do the similar thing on Windows, where we want to be able to view logs that are being written either to varlog, CK varlogs, or some place like that, or it's being written to the Windows event logger. And the way kubectl comes into the picture is we would then have a new command, something like kubectl node logs, that you can point at a node, and that will let you view these logs from the command line itself. I think this is something Maciej is aware. We have this functionality in OpenShift. We have something called OC ADM node logs, which has the same functionality, and we're trying to now upstream this feature. The questions we have is, there is this existing varlog endpoint in the kubelet. Is that being used by any clients, any CLI clients today? We didn't see any use of it in kubectl itself. Then the other question is, at least on the OpenShift side, this sort of viewing of node logs is viewed as a admin-only feature. So only an admin who is using a kubeconfig that is associated with a cluster admin can take advantage of this feature. And from what I understand, there's nothing similar to this on in the kubectl side. So those are the things we would like to discuss and figure out what the best way forward is, because I'm not clear from a security perspective if viewing of node logs should be given to anybody who's on the cluster. And ideally, this should only be viewed by a admin or a cluster admin.
I'll probably start with answering the second question, because when we spoke last time, it wasn't obvious to me, but now that we were talking about logs, and beforehand we were talking about debug. If you look at debug allows any user to debug not only application but a node. Whether you are able to actually debug a node or create a pod that will host mount to a node depends explicitly on your access rights on the cluster. So instead of adding a new command, I was actually thinking that maybe we would just extend the current logs command in a similar way, because what we currently do is we have a logic inside of the logs command, which reads the resource type and acts accordingly on the resource. So when it finds that you're trying to get the logs from a deployment, it will find that this is a deployment. We need to find the current running pod from that deployment and redirects it silently to the appropriate pod. Similarly, we could, for Node, reach out to the appropriate API and get the node logs from there. So that's one thing. And the fact whether you can access the logs or you cannot will purely depend on whether this endpoint is exposed to you or not. And if you don't have the necessary access rights, you'll just get an appropriate information coming from the API server, because this should be easily configured by Airback on the server side, and clients will only consume them if they have the necessary access rights. I honestly have no idea about the consumption of the API endpoint. Maybe others might have some.
So I'm going to take the silence as most likely there are no other clients that have been exposed that have been consuming this var log endpoint, which is what I was guessing too, but I didn't want to make that assumption. So Maciej, I think just to clearly understand what you're suggesting is, rather than introducing a new command, your suggestion is extend kubectl logs to also work with nodes. And
I think it's a reasonable extension of the current log, since we're treating every resource similarly. A node is a resource within a cluster, similarly to how a pod or a deployment is. Why not reusing that and expose the functionality through the pure log command?
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. We're not tied to having a separate command for any reason. That seems like a valid approach. I'm going to now also allow the other folks from SIG Windows who were saying who were going to join here to also speak up. I don't want to take all of the time. Christian, Mark, if you're around, do you have any more questions to add around this?
Hey everybody, can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
All right. Yeah, I don't think I have anything huge to add to that. Really, the open question we've had was whether there is already a client for that Varlog streaming feature. Apparently, there isn't. So, yeah, the next step would be to find a place to add that command, and ideally have that command shielded to be only usable by admin users. What Maciej said might be a valid alternative approach here.
Yeah, thank you, Maciej. I think we just started down this path. I'm sure we'll have more questions, and we'll ping you if we run into more issues or more questions.
Out of curiosity, do you have any particular release you're targeting this for?
So the desire from SIG Windows is to try and get this into 121.
Okay.
We actually have a PR open, at least on the kubelet side, that extends this functionality. We, of course, don't have anything on the kubectl side, which is what I'm looking into and trying to add to the KEP. So the main, I think, plan is to get the KEP accepted and then start working on the implementation and try and get that merged.
I think the server-side bits will be more time-consuming than the client part. Client part should be pretty straightforward, if I remember correctly, because you're basically streaming from a particular endpoint.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I'm not an expert. I've not worked with kubectl so far, so it's all going to be new. So I'm going to be asking questions. Sorry about that.
Should this effort start as a plugin before before we see PRs against the logs command?
It is a valid approach, definitely. I'm not ruling one way or the other. Arvind, there is an interesting question from someone on the chat. We have multiple streams of logs on nodes like kernel, systemd, and others. Should we have a way of listing log streams and streaming one of those logs?
So maybe I can take this. With the current feature that's already implemented, you can essentially stream any file that is in the var log directory and any subdirectory. So if it exists in there, you can kind of specify it and stream it. Obviously, there's no client for it, so it's a bit harder to do. And yeah, then for the journal logs, we don't really have a listing of streams. It's really just what the journal CTL command would return to us that we then stream over. So in case those logs live in the journal, they can be streamed and selectively streamed as well. But there is no such thing as listing the different streams. So you can probably get a get a file listing from the varlog directory, but yeah, there's no logic to selectively stream something really.
If I think it would be valuable input to have on the CAP. I'm pretty sure that solving this along with other questions should be part of the CAP. And if you could leave your comment in that PR, I think it would be very helpful.
I agree, Maciej. I think that would really help if so that we can call it out in the CAP itself that this is doable.
Are there any other questions with regards to node logs? I see there is a discussion, Arvin, that might be worth having a look. It might have some inputs for your proposal.
Okay,
and
sounds good.
In the meantime, we will move on with the next topic.
Okay, thank you for your
Harsh.
time, folks.
Yeah, thank you very much, Arvin. Harsh, design for kubectl await.
Yeah. Can you just open the link, Maciej?
Sure, sure. I was about to do it. I got out of time. Let me close that one.
So actually, I'm stuck at a design like a choice. So Antoine has actually suggested me something, and I kind of misread and implemented something else. So the idea, so what I've implemented is to have a minus minus for condition, like minus minus for flag itself would take in the or conditional statement, and using minus minus for flag multiple times would give you the functionality of an AND. So that's what I was going for. But like Antoine had suggested that having the minus minus for flag multiple times would give you the OR functionality, and if you want the AND functionality, you run the command again. You or basically use the Linux AND operator. So I'm a bit confused because doing it this way gives the benefit of kind of having both of them in one command itself, kubectl itself, whereas uh, Antoine's approach is much cleaner, to be honest. I'm happy to restart. I just wanted to have some views first.
So it's good that you got feedback from Antoine. There are at least 2 other SIGs that are working on conditions. And so I think that a lot of your effort may be coordinating here because of SIG apps and SIG API machinery, I believe, are also in on conditions work and trying to get everyone to for some consensus on these conditions that are going to be used throughout the Kubernetes ecosystem. So it was a good thing that you got Antoine, who is plugged into the SIG API machinery, into this. As I mentioned, I think that there's going to be a significant amount of coordination for any of the work that's being done on these conditions, and just making sure that it actually makes sense with what's going on in the API machinery and SIG apps.
Sean, do you have any links handy?
Not off the top of my head, but I will dig in for that. I know somebody else who is significantly more plugged in, a guy named Morton at my company, who's been doing condition work with SIG apps and been coordinating with the API machinery on that.
Okay, that would be very helpful. I'm personally interested in that topic as well, so I wasn't even aware that there's this effort going on. I must have probably missed that bit of discussion in the SIG API machinery. Anyway, yeah. So I would probably hold with any particular decisions. If this is a cross-SIG effort, it will be definitely reasonable to have it consistent across the board. And before deciding one way or the other, try to figure out what the other six decide on. And Sean will provide in the agenda with a link to follow up um, and follow the other discussion, and then we will use the outputs of that discussion uh, to continue the work on kubectl weight. Harsh, does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm just wondering, like, I'm attracted to what Antoine suggested, but I kind of see the value for what I currently implemented, because you can look for multiple conditions at once. Like, you have one resource and you look for multiple conditions, so that's kind of nice. Uh, yeah. So if this is not attractive, like, I can just go with Antoine's idea instead of waiting.
I mean, this is not about saying which idea is good or bad. Um, it's more about consistency with the conditions that are exposed through the API, with how the conditions then can be consumed and reused for the kubectl commands. So I wouldn't rule out one way or the other. I would just wait for a definitive answer from how this topic will be approached.
Sure, kind
Yeah,
of ironic that I have to wait for kubectl weight. Go on. Sure.
So for instance, on you mentioned condition available or condition progressing. It's not clear. So some of those will apply to certain resources and not to others. And unless the rest of the system agrees that those conditions even exist, it's not going to be workable.
Yeah, that's true. So someone had recently commented that they wanted this for job and a deployment. Like, they just wanted to run one command and check these multiple conditions against a deployment and a job. So I think in that case it kind of makes sense. Like, for particular resources it makes sense, but yeah, there's an inconsistency around which it wouldn't. Anyway, happy to wait out for more.
I'll get back to you by modifying this SIG CLI doc so that everybody can also see it. Does that sound reasonable, Harsh?
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Harsh, for bringing this topic. Sean, you're up next.
So I just wanted to coordinate with the rest of the team. I was hoping to make some progress on our the kubectl commands in the headers. And by the way, we've recently, because of the new KEP format, we've moved them into a new location. We kind of lost the history of this, and yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but that's kind of a unfortunate loss, since it'd be really nice to see who was doing what on this KEP. And I know that the Mache, you are very interested on this. So I wanted to ping, at least, especially ping you to make sure that, get your feedback on actually starting to dig into this and get some of this accomplished.
The initial idea, if I remember correctly, came from Phil, and the issue that was linked with the original, I just recently removed lifecycle frozen or something like that from that issue, so I can point you to the issue. So I remember that this came from Phil, and I was also interested in that because we would be able to consume that information through metrics to be able to say
Exactly.
what users are invoking. That was one of the reasons. But the others were also mentioned in the CAP as well. So make sure to loop Phil as well. I know that he had a conflict, so he had to leave halfway through the call. But anyone else?
I'll reach out to him directly. Yeah. But yeah, I just brought it up in this forum to see if anybody else had either wanted to join or had already started some work on this, just so that we can all coordinate efficiently here. Cool.
Okay.
Anybody who's interested, please please ping me. And if you have any ideas, the KEP is actually, I think, pretty well done and pretty specific. But if you're interested, give me a ping.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Sean. Marek, you're up next. I think you have two topics. I remember that the protobuf was related with kubectl top. So go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Mark, or on GitHub Seratius. I come here from SIG instrumentation to talk about two things. So firstly, I wanted to pick up one topic that was important for me as a maintainer of metric server, which is the main source of, or the only, or the default source of metrics for kubectl top. And one of the problems or things that we are currently working on is trying to shift resources that we use from things that could be instead of using them for non-functional improvements, to make some improvements in the agent itself. So the thing that currently we are working on is increasing the freshness of the data. So one thing, maybe you noticed that kubectl top currently gives you by default updates only once per minute. And we want to increase this by default to 15 seconds, making the kubectl top much more useful for debugging. Main change here is that we would want to keep the same level of resources, and one of the biggest improvement would be changing in all the clients, or all the different clients, how this API is called, with preference to using protobuf. Currently, I think I changed in 120. Controller manager already uses protobuf. The only thing, so the second, I think, common user use of this API is kubectl top. So I wanted to overall maybe start a discussion about using changing the content type, at least for this command, possibly for others too. Are there any overall thoughts, or I don't know, I haven't been SIG, so I don't know his story about why we didn't use the protobuf, or preferred JSON by default. I think it's because it's default, it's preferred, but I know that SIG scalability went around and changed everywhere that was impactful, for performance use. So we have cases that prefer protobuf. I'm just asking if kubectl top is the place also for this.
Yeah, protobuf was implemented basically everywhere where we're talking cluster internally. So controllers to API server are talking protobuf because it's better for both parties, especially given how much communication between them is happening. I'm personally struggling because this kind of change is actually a change in behavior, and I'm not 100% sure that. I mean, I don't object to the value of this change. But maybe we should do it before we change the default. Maybe we could do it through a flag to the top command. With exposing a flag where you could pick the protobuf, or eventually the resync period, which is currently, as you mentioned, 1 minute to lower, would require to switch to protobuf, let's say. So we would leave the defaults as is, but if you would be lowering the resolution to, let's say, 15 seconds, that will require you to switch to protobuf for performance reasons. About that kind of approach.
Yeah. So my only worry is that so everything like the resources that metric server has and like the frequency periods is set up prior during the agent deployment. So the problem here is that it's enough for one person or one cluster user to forget to set the flag to basically overload the metric server, or increase resource usage by 30%. That's it. It's that kind of improvement, like 30% of memories of metric servers used on JSON, like marshalling.
Does anyone else have any objections or ideas about this topic?
So to be clear, this is a breaking change that would require a new client, right?
Kingdom, can you repeat and put yourself a little bit above your volume? I could barely hear what you were saying.
Volume is can you hear me now a little bit better? Just to be clear, is this a breaking change? It would require a new client?
And like as the breaking change, I think from beginning of metric server always and API machinery always supported protobuf. Don't know history, but assuming that kube aggregator at the beginning and like the extension servers, I think they supported proto because I think it was created maybe around later, like the support for 5K nodes.
It shouldn't be a big breaking change with regards to communication between the client and the server, because within the boundaries of our supported versions, it will work just fine. So I'm not worried about that one. Although we are changing the default behavior of a command that people are using. So I would probably suggest exposing this temporarily as a flag and provide a warning to users if they are using still the old one that we will be changing this to protobuf in the next release. This would allow people to have the necessary time for the change, prepare for the change. Then we would flip the switch to default in the next release. And then eventually in 2 releases, we would remove the flag along the way without the ability to go back. So instead of doing a big bang change, I would prefer to roll this type of a change gradually. What do you think about that kind of approach, Mark?
Yeah, it sounds reasonable.
Okay, cool. I'll leave a comment in the PR about this.
I have a quick question while we're on it. I won't take too much time. Is the PR really just these 2 lines that are changed?
Yes.
So it's transparent everywhere else.
Totally. Yeah. I've verified it with metrics on API server side. That's the content type changes. Yeah. So it tested.
Nice.
Yeah, it is that simple to change from Golang to protobuf. The entire machinery handles all the rest automatically, which is pretty awesome. What about the other topic? Or is it? Yeah.
I don't think we'll have enough time, so I reduce it for demo. Maybe we can just discuss it. So if you can open the issue overall, and I think the discussion code is a POC, so it's not worthy to even look for, because there's not a lot of things in code. In the main comments, you can see the two commands that or the changes in the kubectl that I want to I was experimenting with. So overall idea that I'm like experimenting with is that by default kubectl top only gives us simple access to CPU and memory. And the main reason is that the most default implementation, most core part of Kubernetes monitoring, which is called core metrics, are those two metrics that are used on like mainly by autoscalers. Like if you want easy default behavior for autoscaling, you have CPU and memory, and you go. But aside of that, SIG instrumentation also has different APIs for metrics, and one of them is is custom metrics. Custom metrics differ only from core metrics by two things. One, it can be defined any possible metric that you can think of. And second, it can be to any Kubernetes, refer to any Kubernetes resource. So not only pods, but you can have metrics on nodes, you can have metrics on deployments, you can have metrics on ingress. If you its main usage is if you want to auto-scale your workloads based your input on ingress. I know load balancer, you have load balancer connected to your ingress, you can expose metrics and do it. So currently, this requires much more setup from on monitoring side, but there was currently no work before to have this data available in clients. What would look like? We would need one first command, give me a list of metrics that are available for such some resource. So here, just a temporary name, kubectl metrics pod. And second, you have a command, you can add technically a simple flag, which could be more adapted to how custom columns to add any custom column that you would want to use it for. I think there is a question.
Sorry, the question that I wrote was about the previous topic.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so with that, technically, if you would deploy somewhat fixed, but if you deploy, if you're a user of Prometheus operator or Kube Prometheus, deploy it, maybe do some tweaks, you will get those metrics almost by default. Like those results from those two commands and access all to those new metrics by default. So here I mostly wanted to bring this topic to discussion, and possibly if there is any interest or if that, like, what kind of, if there's interest in it, and how such changes should be proposed, as should be proposed in such changes as kubectl. Should it be a plugin? Should we develop in kubectl top, or and if we should write such change requires full cap.
Cap is always a good answer to most of the question. I know it's not the most favorable, but it's a good because on one hand, we document the functionality, which in most cases just happens to be added and then forgotten, and Cap at least gives us some kind of a history, what the intent was and what the desire from the functionality. And it allows to express some ideas back and forth or questions in a consistent form, and for others to digest if they have any questions. But overall I like it very much. So yeah, probably Cap, and then extending the top metrics would be good. In the interest of time, I'll probably leave off the discussion for the next time. I still want to go because I promised to Dims that we'll go through stand-ups. From Nick, I'll probably speak up. There are one PR requesting CUI repo in the OpenShift org, in the Kubernetes org, sorry. And there's a PR open describing this change. Basically, we are moving CUI under Kubernetes repo, as it was mentioned in the past. I'm not sure, Nick, you want to add something to that one?
Nope, that's it. Yeah, just wanted to make FYI on that.
Cool.
Thanks.
And most importantly, I want to hear from Jeff with regards to customize. And
hey, Machi, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. So I've updated issue number 1500 in the customized repository. That's what's tracking this reintegration. So we've been deleting code, getting the libraries ready to go. And the best way people can help is use the current version of the latest version of Customize 3.9.2 report bugs. And that version of Customize is using the same libraries that we're going to be integrating into kubectl. So I'm feeling pretty good about it. I don't see any major bugs. Just waiting for a little bit more feedback from folks. Meanwhile, preparing PRs and whatnot. So that's it. If you want to help, try to file some bugs on 3.9.2. We'll probably release 3.9.2. We'll certainly release 3.9.3 next Wednesday, and that'll be it. That'll be the version of code that we integrate into kubectl.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Machi.
Yep.
Okay, with that, I think I'm going to close the call today. Sorry for the 5 minutes overrun, and thank you very much for your time. See you soon. Bye, all.